I grew up around a lot of immigrants from countries far away, and those are the stories that I'm very familiar with. So for this project, I wanted to speak to someone who was from somewhere a bit closer. In fact, right across the border. Tanya is an immigrant from Mexico. She came here at a young age with her family and is a very active member of her community. This is her story.
My father came to Colorado to work because he had a cousin here.
Okay.
And as I've seen, people migrate to where they're gonna have a little bit of support to get started. So on and off, he would come and work half the year to be able to provide for us in Mexico. And it came the time where my mom said, "You can't leave us anymore, you have to take us with." And he figured it out and we all migrated together. A big struggle for me has been this idea that you have to view people that are not the same as others. So there's always that othering self, the feeling that you feel when entering the room and you don't share the lived experience with somebody. There's a lot of challenges as an immigrant, but it's also a very friendly state that I can do the work that I do, the activism, the organizing.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing or that you've done?
Well, I went to a campus that didn't have much diversity, and I was an undocumented student going through a lot of things, and it was at a moment where the DREAM Act was going to be debated and nobody was talking about it. There was no awareness. I felt alienated at the campus and I wanted to see it change. I wanted people to know what immigration was and how can you support. So I connected with local organizations and started bringing immigration awareness to the campus. As I graduated, I kept volunteering with these local organizations and doing social justice work. Like just a few years ago, we couldn't get a driver's license. And I was part of that organizing campaign that brought that issue to the Capitol, and it passed. And since SB 251 passed, us as undocumented people have been able to apply for a driver's license.
Okay.
And that's been huge. I've worked immigrant rights efforts to stop the deportation of folks, to get people active in knowing what you can do when you're in deportation proceedings, and setting up a strategy to be able to stay here in your home with your family. My mom was put in deportation proceedings in 2009, and we've been fighting her deportation case since then. My phone rings once every 2 weeks, sometimes more often, of a person that has been put in deportation proceedings and they don't know what to do, and I sometimes don't know what to do, but I know that I need to hear their story and just kind of be a witness of the pain and suffering of my community.
I'm sure it takes a toll on you.
It is. It's been moments where there's burnout stages where I can't do work for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And it's heavy, it's just, I cry a lot. But it's also, very beautiful when there's wins, when there's victories. For me, it all starts with conversations, with knowing somebody and appreciating their story and humanizing everything. Because of the work that I've been doing in the community, I've worked with people who have had a change of mind and opinion and are able to, see me as a human being and support my struggle.
The last interview that I did was with Walter. He's interviewed and shared stories of around 300 immigrants, and so I wanted to know more about his project and what he learned from listening to all of those stories.
Class folks. We were a whole lot closer to the poverty side than we were to the middle class side. I think it was being part of a small community, and my mom's family didn't have a lot of money, so I had sort of an affinity for what it was like to be different, and I grew up with that sensibility because I think the people in my family, particularly the women, were really sensitive and more nurturing. And that gave me, I think, a better perspective. Immigration is a part of our nation and has made us who we are. It is our strength. There are those now who are trying to tell us that it's not a strength, it's a weakness, and keep certain people out. And that's been the history of immigration in the United States since the get-go. It's our job, we the people, to try to resist that kind of ignorance. The immigrant experience can be pretty difficult, even under the best of circumstances. And I was part of a group called the Community Integration Project, and we were trying to figure out ways to make our community more welcoming. And we were having some problems with that because a lot of people in the immigrant community didn't feel comfortable and were fearful. So one of the ideas I got was to try to use storytelling, a short 4-minute story that would play on the radio and give some people an idea of who the immigrant is, to make them more human and less objective. And they said, well, that's a great idea, why don't you go do that? My idea was to not just tell the Latino story. The Latino story is followed the next day by a story from some old Italian guy who had the same experience. His family had to come and be the other and experience what it's like to be on the outside or be seen as different. It's made me feel more a part of my community, and I hope that it's made others feel that way. I've gotten feedback from folks who say, I've lived next to so-and-so all of my life. He's been my neighbor. I had no idea that he went through that. And I've had sons and daughters say, I didn't know my father. He's never told us that story.
So what is it about storytelling that you think is a more effective approach, or in your opinion, what does it really do, I guess?
Well, it's what makes us human. I think stories help people be more comfortable and relaxed with folks that they may not know. And what they learn through these stories, which what I've learned is that people learn that they're not that different than the Muslim or the Irishman or the German or the Italian. And it also gives us a sense of ourselves. You know, without stories, we wouldn't know where we came from and ultimately where we're going. There's something really sacred about sitting in a room one-on-one with a person that you don't know and just listening, I mean deeply listening, and not telling your story. I mean, I think we're used to that, bouncing our stories off of one another. Oh, you say something and then that reminds me of a story that I want to tell, which is great. That's conversation, that's dialogue. But there's something really sacred about the interview process where you sit and you listen with your whole being and follow the story and follow up with questions. It really honors that person, and that's a sacred thing.